What if I told you that scattered across the ancient world, etched into temple walls, buried in sacred scrolls, and whispered in forgotten myths, lie 24 mysterious symbols that hold the power to rewrite history? These aren't just decorative designs or random markings. They're a secret language, a hidden code left behind by civilizations that knew truths we're only beginning to grasp. Picture standing before the towering pyramids of Giza, tracing your fingers over the Ankh, that looped cross symbolizing eternal life, or wandering the misty hills of Ireland, where Celtic knots twist endlessly, telling stories of infinity and interconnectedness. These symbols weren't created in isolation. They're threads in a vast, interconnected tapestry, linking cultures that supposedly never met. Think about the last time you saw a symbol that made you pause, maybe a religious icon, a corporate logo, or even an emoji. Now imagine that same symbol carrying the weight of centuries, holding secrets about humanity's deepest fears, hopes, and discoveries. That's the power of these 24 ancient emblems. From the lotus flower rising from murky waters in Buddhist art to the double-headed eagle guarding Byzantine empires, each one is a puzzle piece in a grander story. And here's the astonishing part. Many of these symbols reappear in cultures separated by oceans and millennia, as if our ancestors were all tapping into the same universal wisdom. This isn't just about archaeology or art history. It's about cracking open a door to the past and realizing how much we've overlooked. Why did the Tree of Life appear in both Mesopotamian carvings and Norse mythology? How did the Ouroboros, the snake eating its own tail, symbolize cyclical time for Egyptians, Greeks, and Aztecs alike? The answers don't just reshape our textbooks, they reshape how we see ourselves. Because if these symbols really are a shared language, what else did our ancestors know that we've forgotten? That's the journey we're starting today, one symbol at a time, uncovering the hidden layer of history that binds us all. So let's begin where all great discoveries start, with curiosity and the willingness to see the familiar in extraordinary new ways. Of all the ancient symbols that have mysteriously crossed cultural boundaries, few are as instantly recognizable or as enigmatic as the Ankh. This elegant loop-topped cross wasn't just a religious icon to the Egyptians. It was a physical key believed to unlock the gates between life and death. Picture a pharaoh standing before the gods, the Ankh gripped tightly in their hand like a sacred passport to the afterlife. Or imagine a priest pressing it against a worshipper's lips, a ritual said to breathe divine energy into their soul. But here's where it gets fascinating. This wasn't just Egypt's secret. Centuries later, Coptic Christians adopted a nearly identical symbol, calling it the crux ansata, or cross with a handle, weaving it into their art and architecture. Even early Christian manuscripts sometimes depicted Jesus holding an Ankh-like cross, blurring the lines between pagan and sacred imagery. So why does this shape, a simple loop atop a T, hold such universal power? One theory points to its possible origins as a stylized sandal strap, tying it to the Egyptian belief that gods literally walked among mortals. Another suggests it represents the union of masculine and feminine energies, the loop symbolizing the womb and the cross the phallus, together creating the cycle of life. But perhaps the most compelling clue lies in its nickname, the Key of the Nile. Just as the Nile's annual floods brought rebirth to the land, the Ankh promised spiritual renewal, a concept so potent it resonated across deserts and oceans. What's striking isn't just the symbol's persistence, it's the way cultures adapted it while preserving its core meaning. In Meroe, the kingdom south of Egypt, queens were depicted receiving the Ankh from lion-headed gods, a local twist on the same theme of divine grace. Meanwhile, Gnostic traditions in the Mediterranean used it to represent the soul's liberation from material existence. This isn't mere coincidence, it's evidence of a shared human yearning to understand what lies beyond. The Ankh's journey challenges the idea that ancient civilizations developed in isolation, hinting instead at a web of exchanged ideas carried by traders, migrants, or perhaps something even deeper, a collective unconscious reaching for the same truth. The Ouroboros slithers through history like a riddle wrapped in scales. This serpent swallowing its own tail appears in civilizations that never traded scrolls or shared philosophies, yet all grasped its eerie truth: time is a circle, not a line. In the dusty pages of a Greek alchemy text from Alexandria, it curls around the words, "the all is one," hinting that destruction feeds creation. Norse myths tell of Jörmungandr, the world serpent coiled around Midgard, biting its tail to maintain cosmic balance. Halfway across the globe, Hindu scriptures describe the serpent Anantashesha, floating on primordial waters with endless loops representing the cycles of existence. How did this same haunting image emerge independently in cultures separated by continents and centuries? Alchemists weren't just mixing potions when they drew the Ouroboros in their manuscripts. They were mapping the universe's greatest secret. To them, the serpent's self-cannibalism mirrored the process of distillation, where substances break down only to reform into something purer. The philosopher's stone itself was said to undergo this cycle, decay leading to rejuvenation, death birthing immortality. Centuries later, psychologist Carl Jung saw the Ouroboros as a mirror of the human mind, where confronting our darkest shadows could lead to enlightenment. The serpent's endless loop became a metaphor for psychological rebirth, the idea that we must consume our past selves to evolve. But the symbol's real magic lies in its defiance of linear thinking. Ancient Egyptians painted it in tombs as a promise that souls don't end, they transform. Aztec carvings show Quetzalcoatl as a feathered Ouroboros, linking the heavens and underworld in an eternal dance. Even today, scientists studying the cosmos borrow the symbol when discussing theories of cyclic universes, big bangs leading to big crunches, over and over. The Ouroboros whispers that every ending carries a beginning, that collapse and renewal are two sides of the same coin. What's breathtaking isn't just the symbol's persistence, but how each culture adapted it to their deepest fears and hopes. For the Vikings, it was an omen of apocalypse. For Tibetan Buddhists, a meditation on impermanence. Modern physicists might call it entropy and regeneration. This shared visual language suggests something profound, that humanity's brightest minds, whether shaman or scholar, keep returning to the same truth. The serpent's loop isn't just about time, it's about resilience. It tells us that after winter comes spring, after darkness, light, and perhaps that's why this ancient symbol still coils around our imagination today. The Caduceus dangles from hospital signs and doctors' coats today, its twin snakes coiled around a winged staff. But this symbol's journey from ancient myth to modern medicine is anything but straightforward. Originally, it wasn't healing but speed and trickery that defined this emblem. In Greek mythology, Hermes, the quick-footed messenger of the gods, carried it as a badge of his crafty nature. The serpents, they represented negotiation, the back and forth of trade and diplomacy. The wings, a nod to swift movement, whether delivering divine messages or escorting souls to the underworld. So how did an object tied to commerce and cunning become the face of healthcare? The mix-up traces back to a case of mistaken identity in the 19th century. Military medics in the United States began using the caduceus instead of the rod of Asclepius, the true ancient symbol of medicine. featuring a single serpent winding around a plain staff. Asclepius, the Greek god of healing, was said to wield this staff with the power to resurrect the dead, his serpent embodying rejuvenation, since snakes shed their skin and emerge renewed. But somewhere along the way, the two rods got confused, possibly because of the Caduceus's visual flair or its association with neutrality, a useful trait for medics in war zones. What's fascinating isn't just the error, but how the Caduceus absorbed new meaning despite its origins. In alchemy, the intertwined serpents represented opposing forces: Mercury and sulfur, male and female united in harmony. Later, Freudian psychologists saw them as symbols of duality, the conscious and unconscious mind. Today, though doctors might argue over which staff is correct, the Caduceus persists, proving that symbols aren't static. They morph with time, collecting layers of significance like sediment. This accidental icon also raises a deeper question: why do humans keep repurposing ancient symbols? Perhaps because they carry a weight of history, a sense of authority that new designs lack. Or maybe it's proof that even in our modern world, we're still drawn to the same primal motifs: serpents, wings, and the promise of transformation. The Caduceus, born from myth and muddled by history, now stands as a testament to how symbols outgrow their origins, becoming something far richer than their creators ever imagined. Three spirals endlessly chasing each other. This is the Triskelion, one of humanity's oldest and most persistent symbols. Etched into stone tombs in Ireland 5,000 years ago, woven into the intricate metalwork of Celtic warriors, and stamped onto the flag of Sicily like a badge of forgotten wisdom, the Triskelion's triple coils seem to whisper a secret about the fabric of reality. What's mesmerizing isn't just its age, but how cultures separated by vast distances arrived at the same design. In Japan, the Mitsudomo, a near-identical triple swirl, adorns Shinto shrines as a representation of the interplay between creation, preservation, and destruction. Meanwhile, on the sun-baked islands of Malta, prehistoric temples feature the same spiral motif carved into limestone, as if the builders were trying to capture the rhythm of the cosmos itself. So why three? For the Celts, the spirals mirrored their sacred triplicities: life, death, and rebirth, past, present, and future. Norse myth spoke of three fates weaving destiny, while Hindu tradition revered the Trimurti: Brahma the creator, Vishnu the preserver, and Shiva the destroyer. Even nature seems obsessed with this pattern: the three phases of the moon, the three primary colors, the triple helix of our very DNA. The Triskelion might be humanity's earliest attempt to map this universal law of threes, a visual shorthand for balance in motion. Unlike static symbols, its spirals suggest perpetual movement, like planets orbiting or seasons cycling. But here's the puzzle: how did this symbol surface in places with no known contact? The Maori of New Zealand carved it into sacred meeting houses as a sign of spiritual growth, while Sicilians adopted it as a talisman against evil, claiming the three legs represented the island's triangular shape. Some scholars propose these parallel inventions point to an intuitive human understanding of sacred geometry, that certain shapes resonate deeply with our psyche. Others wonder if it's evidence of a lost global culture, a shared ancestry buried beneath millennia. The Triskelion's endurance hints at something profound. Modern physicists use similar models to explain quark interactions, and psychologists see it as a metaphor for mind, body, and spirit. Perhaps its spirals are more than art, they're a silent language, reminding us that chaos and order, beginnings and endings, are forever entwined. Every time this ancient symbol resurfaces in a tattoo parlor, a corporate logo, or a fantasy film, it carries forward a question first asked by our ancestors: what if the universe isn't linear but a dance of three? Cut into weathered Viking runestones and scratched onto ancient Germanic artifacts, the Valknut stares back at us like a geometric riddle, three interlocking triangles, their lines crossing and recrossing in a dance of eternal connection. Known as Odin's knot or the knot of the slain, this symbol wasn't just decoration, it was a spiritual passport marking the fallen warrior's journey to Valhalla. Picture a Norse chieftain's funeral pyre, the flames licking at his shield as the Valknut is carved into his memorial stone, binding him to the Allfather's Hall of Heroes. But here's the twist, this symbol doesn't belong to Scandinavia alone. The same interlocked triangles appear in Roman floor mosaics from Pompeii, hidden beneath volcanic ash for centuries, and in the sacred geometry of Hindu yantras, where they represent the interplay of creation, preservation, and destruction. How did three simple triangles become a universal cipher for the warrior's covenant with the divine? One clue lies in the number 3, a sacred thread woven through countless cultures. For the Vikings, the Valknut's triangles mirrored Odin's triple role as war god, wisdom seeker, and psychopomp guiding souls to the afterlife. In Hindu tradition, the shape echoes the Trimurti, while early Christians used similar knotwork to symbolize the Holy Trinity. But the Valknut carries a darker weight than most triadic symbols. Archaeologists find it carved beside images of human sacrifice and battle scenes, suggesting it wasn't just about glory, it was a reminder of the price of ascension. A 9th century tapestry from the Oseberg ship burial shows the knot hovering over a hanged man, echoing Odin's own ordeal. 9 knights dangling from Yggdrasil, the world tree, to gain forbidden knowledge. The Valknut, then, might represent the ultimate paradox, binding oneself to death to achieve transcendence. What's startling isn't just the symbol's spread, but how its meaning shifts yet retains a core theme. In Roman contexts, the interlocking triangles adorned floors as protective talismans, warding off evil spirits. Compare that to Hindu mandalas, where the same form maps the cosmos, its lines tracing the flow of energy between realms. Even the Lakota Sua's medicine wheel, though not identical, shares the Valknut's ethos, a sacred geometry uniting earth, sky, and spirit. This isn't mere coincidence. It's evidence that warrior cultures, whether Norse or Roman or Rajput, recognized a shared truth, that true power comes from surrendering to something greater. The Valknut's triangles don't just intersect, they dissolve boundaries, just as battle dissolves the line between mortal and myth. Modern scholars still debate whether the Valknut was a protective sigil, a map of the afterlife, or even a shamanic symbol for altered states of consciousness. Runestones from Gotland show it alongside Odin's 8-legged horse Sleipnir, a creature able to traverse worlds, hinting that the knot might be a guide for souls navigating the unseen. Today, the symbol resurfaces in unexpected places, from heavy metal album art to neo-pagan tattoos, proof that its call still echoes. It asks us the same question it posed to axe-wielding ancestors: what would you sacrifice for wisdom? The Valknut's enduring power lies in its ambiguity, a shape that means everything and nothing, just like the fate of those who dared to wear it into battle. The flower of life hides in plain sight, a delicate lattice of overlapping circles, so precise it feels less like art and more like mathematics made visible. Carved into the granite walls of Egypt's Osirian temple, painted onto the ceilings of China's Forbidden City, and sketched in the margins of Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks, this pattern transcends time and geography with eerie consistency. At first glance, it resembles a honeycomb frozen in mid-formation, but look closer. The intersecting curves reveal a hidden structure, a geometric skeleton that mystics and scientists alike believe underpins everything from the petals of a rose to the orbits of planets. What makes this symbol so extraordinary isn't just its age. It's the way it seems to encode the very rules of existence. Sacred geometry traditions from India to medieval Europe describe the flower of life as the blueprint of creation, the template from which all forms emerge. The Kabbalah's tree of life, the Platonic solids, even the helical structure of DNA, all can be derived from its intricate web. Renaissance thinkers like Da Vinci weren't just doodling, they were reverse engineering nature's design, tracing the symbol's proportions to understand the harmony between human anatomy and cosmic architecture. When Da Vinci drew the Vitruvian Man, that iconic figure with outstretched limbs inside a circle, he was essentially unpacking the flower of life's hidden ratios, revealing how the same geometry governs stars and skeletons. But here's the mystery: how did cultures with no known contact arrive at the same pattern? The Phoenicians, known as the ancient world's greatest traders, might have carried the symbol across continents, but that doesn't explain its appearance in Japan's Edo period art or Mesoamerican carvings. Some researchers propose a more radical idea, that the flower of life isn't an invention but a discovery. Just as mathematicians uncover universal constants like pi, ancient priests and scholars might have independently stumbled upon this geometric mother pattern through meditation or observation. Modern physics lends eerie credence to this theory. At the quantum level, particles arrange themselves in geometries eerily reminiscent of the flower's overlapping circles, while astrophysicists find similar configurations in the clustering of galaxies. The symbol's practical applications deepen the intrigue. Stonemasons in Gothic cathedrals used it to calculate precise angles for vaulted ceilings, harnessing its proportions to distribute weight flawlessly. Alchemists superimposed it over maps, believing sacred sites like Stonehenge and the Great Pyramid aligned with its nodes. Even today, engineers borrow its principles for everything from antenna designs to solar panels, proving that what ancient mystics called divine symmetry has very real-world utility. Perhaps the flower of life endures because it satisfies a primal human craving, the belief that chaos is an illusion, that beneath the surface everything connects. Whether etched in temple stone or studied in a quantum lab, it whispers the same promise: there's an order to the universe, and we're all part of its unfolding design. The mandala begins as a simple circle, yet within that curve lies an entire cosmos. Tibetan monks spend weeks painstakingly pouring colored sand into intricate geometric patterns, each grain representing a star, a prayer, or a step on the path to enlightenment. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Navajo healers create nearly identical circular designs from crushed minerals and flower petals, their medicine wheels mapping the sacred directions and the cycle of life. What's astonishing isn't just the visual similarity, but how these cultures arrived at the same profound realization: that the universe's complexity can be contained within a circle, and that creating then destroying these ephemeral masterpieces is itself a spiritual practice. Carl Jung stumbled upon mandalas during a personal crisis, sketching them unconsciously in his notebooks. He soon recognized them as ancient blueprints of the human psyche, symbols of wholeness emerging during times of fragmentation. Patients who'd never encountered Eastern art began drawing mandalas in therapy, their minds instinctively reaching for this universal form to restore balance. Jung called it a safe refuge of inner reconciliation, a place where chaos could reorganize into order. Modern neuroscience lends credence to this idea. Studies show that viewing symmetrical mandalas lowers stress hormones, as if our brains recognize some primal harmony in their geometry. But the mandala's true power lies in its impermanence. Tibetan monks sweep their labor-intensive sand paintings into rivers after completion, a ritual that mirrors the Buddhist teaching of non-attachment. Hindu tantric practitioners use mandalas as temporary gateways to the divine, dissolving them after ceremonies to signify the illusion of form. Even the rose windows of Gothic cathedrals, though made of enduring stone, play with light in ways that change hourly, reminding worshippers that beauty, like life, is fleeting. This paradox is the mandala's secret. It's both a map of cosmic order and a lesson in letting go. Why does this symbol transcend time and tradition? Perhaps because the circle is humanity's first and most profound teacher. From the cyclical paths of celestial bodies to the rhythmic beating of our hearts, existence moves in circles. The mandala codifies this truth, offering a visual hymn to interconnection. Today, we encounter its legacy everywhere in the concentric rings of crop circles, the spiral of a seashell's growth, even the circular interfaces of our digital devices. Each one whispers the same ancient reminder that endings are beginnings, that destruction fuels creation, and that within every one of us burns a miniature universe waiting to be acknowledged. The swastika spins through history like a wheel of fire, once a universal emblem of the sun's life-giving power, now a scar etched into modern memory. 5,000 years ago, it adorned the hips of the goddess Kali in India, her dance of creation and destruction mirrored in its four bent arms. In ancient China, it curled around bronze coins as a promise of prosperity, while Navajo weavers threaded it into blankets as a sacred representation of the wandering wind. Even the floor mosaics of early Christian churches in Ephesus hid swastikas beneath saints' feet, their once innocent curves blending seamlessly into crosses. How could a symbol so deeply woven into humanity's spiritual fabric become synonymous with unspeakable horror? The answer lies not in the shape itself, but in the stories we hang upon it. Archaeologists trace the swastika's earliest appearances to the Indus Valley civilization, where it likely represented the sun's journey across the sky, a fitting metaphor for cyclical renewal. Finnish shamans painted it on drums to guide souls between worlds, while Greek potters in Troy spun it as a decorative motif alongside flowers and birds. Its Sanskrit name, swastika, literally means well-being, a far cry from the 20th century's grim associations. The symbol's universal appeal might stem from its simplicity, four lines intersecting at right angles, suggesting motion, balance, and the cardinal directions. Unlike culturally specific icons, the swastika's geometric purity made it adaptable, a blank canvas onto which societies projected their deepest hopes. Then came the theft. In the 1920s, German nationalists digging through obscure academic papers latched onto the swastika as a supposed Aryan emblem, despite its presence in countless non-Indo-European cultures. The Nazi Party tilted it 45 degrees, drained its color, and crammed it into a white circle on blood-red banners, a deliberate perversion of its original harmony. Overnight, a sacred symbol shared by Jains, Lakota healers, and Baltic farmers became a global shorthand for hatred. The irony is crushing. The same shape that once adorned Buddha's heart in Tibetan thankas now evokes gas chambers and genocide. Yet resilience flickers in the margins. Across Asia, the swastika still marks temple doorways and festival lanterns, its original meaning fiercely guarded. In Finland, Air Force planes bore the symbol until 2020 as a nod to pre-Nazi traditions, while Navajo elders quietly teach children its true significance as whirling logs, a symbol of healing. Even mathematics reclaims it. The swastika curve describes a family of algebraic functions, untarnished by history's stains. This duality forces us to confront a painful truth. No symbol is inherently good or evil. They're mirrors reflecting back whatever we choose to see. The swastika's tragedy isn't just its hijacking, it's the reminder that even the most ancient wisdom can be twisted, and that redemption requires remembering the light that came before the dark. The Eye of Horus stares out from ancient papyrus scrolls with unblinking intensity, not just an emblem, but a living bridge between mathematics, mythology, and the mysteries of human perception. To the Egyptians, this stylized falcon eye was far more than decoration. It was a cosmic calculator, a medical textbook, and a divine weapon rolled into one. The myth itself reads like a primal drama. Horus, the sky god, loses his left eye in a brutal battle with Set, the chaos deity. Thoth, the god of wisdom, restores the eye, but in doing so, transforms it into a vessel of sacred knowledge. Each fragment of the eye's structure corresponded to a precise fraction in Egyptian math, turning the symbol into a mnemonic device for measurement. The brow became 1/64th, the pupil 1/32nd, the curved tail 1/16th pieces of a puzzle that priests used to calculate everything from grain rations to temple dimensions. But the eye's journey didn't end with the pharaohs. Centuries later, the same symbol resurfaces in Renaissance alchemy manuscripts, where it's labeled the Oculus Dei, the Eye of God, a representation of omniscience. Fast forward to the founding of the United States, and there it is again, peering from the pyramid on the Great Seal, adopted by Freemasons as the all-seeing eye. This wasn't blind imitation. It was a deliberate nod to an unbroken chain of esoteric thought. The Masons, steeped in symbolic tradition, recognized the eye's power as a metaphor for enlightenment, the idea that true vision extends beyond the physical into the realm of moral and spiritual clarity. What's fascinating isn't just the symbol's persistence, but how each culture adapted its meaning while preserving its core essence. In Egyptian funerary texts, the Eye of Horus was a protective amulet painted on coffin lids to guide souls through the underworld. Greek sailors later carved it onto their ships' prows as the Eye of Providence, believing it warded off storms. Even today, pharmacists in France occasionally display the symbol, a lingering echo of its ancient association with healing. This duality, protection and perception, hints at a deeper truth the ancients grasped, that to see clearly is to be shielded from deception, whether by enemies or one's own illusions. Modern science adds an eerie layer to the eye's legacy. Neurologists note that the symbol's proportions align strikingly with the structure of the human brain's thalamus, the region responsible for relaying sensory signals. Could the Egyptians have intuitively mapped neural anatomy millennia before microscopes? Or does the eye's design tap into some universal aesthetic of perception, a shape that simply feels right to the human mind? The answer might lie in between proof that symbols, like dreams, speak the language of the subconscious. The Eye of Horus challenges us to reconsider what vision means. It's not just about observing the world, but deciphering its hidden patterns, whether etched in temple stone, encoded in secret societies, or whispered in the silent language of mathematics. Every time this symbol reappears on a dollar bill, in a tattoo parlor, or tucked into a fantasy novel, it asks the same question: are we looking or are we truly seeing? The Labrys gleams from ancient frescoes like a thunderbolt frozen in bronze. This double-headed axe wasn't just a tool, but a sacred key unlocking the spiritual world of the Minoans. Picture a priestess in the palace of Knossos, raising the Labrys high during rituals, its twin blades catching the torchlight as dancers whirl around bull-headed pillars. Unlike the brutal axes of later warriors, this weapon radiated paradox. Its symmetrical curves embodied the balance between life and death, harvest and sacrifice, the earthly and the divine. What's striking isn't just its prominence in Minoan art, but where it appears always clutched by women. In a world where most ancient cultures associated weaponry with male gods, the Labrys belonged to goddesses, a visceral symbol of feminine authority over both spiritual and temporal realms. Archaeologists trace its origins to Neolithic Çatalhöyük, where mother goddess figurines hold the double axe as a birthing talisman. By the Bronze Age, it had evolved into something grander, the ceremonial centerpiece of bull-leaping rites, where young athletes vaulted over charging beasts in a dance of danger and grace. The very word labyrinth may derive from Labrys, suggesting that the twisting corridors of Knossos weren't just a maze, but a symbolic journey guided by the axe's dual nature. Every turn mirrored its blades, one path leading to revelation, the other to oblivion. This duality resonated across cultures. In Anatolia, Hittite storm gods wielded it as a lightning splitter, while Amazon legends described warrior queens brandishing labrys like weapons with terrifying precision. So why did such a potent symbol vanish for millennia, only to flare back into visibility during 20th century feminist movements? The answer lies in the slow erasure of matriarchal narratives. As patriarchal religions rose, the Labrys was demonized or trivialized, recast as a monster's weapon in Greek myths, or reduced to a decorative motif on Roman shields. Yet its essence persisted underground, etched into the artifacts of secretive goddess cults and whispered in folk traditions. When lesbian feminists in the 1970s reclaimed it, they weren't inventing a new icon. They were resurrecting an ancient language of female sovereignty. The Labrys' resurgence speaks to a hunger for symbols that predate patriarchal rewrite, a longing to reconnect with a time when power wasn't gendered but holistic. Modern scholars still debate whether the Minoans were truly matriarchal, but the Labrys' legacy transcends academic quibbles. Its blades cut to the heart of a timeless human tension, how societies assign value to different kinds of strength. Today, it flashes in pride parades and tattoos, a silent challenge to binaries, a reminder that creation and destruction have always been two sides of the same sacred edge. The Triquetra twists through history like a braid of shifting beliefs, three elegant arcs interlaced in an endless dance, each curve holding a different meaning depending on who wears it. To Iron Age Celts, it mapped the cosmos, earth, sea, and sky woven together in sacred balance. Druids carved it into oak altars as a representation of the triple goddess maiden, mother, and crone, while warriors inked it onto their skin as a talisman of protection. Fast forward 1,000 years, and the same symbol gleams from the pages of illuminated Gospels, now embodying Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. How did this ancient knot survive the collision of pagan and Christian worlds? The answer lies in its genius design, a shape so fluid it could hold opposing theologies without breaking. What's fascinating isn't just the symbol's adaptability, but the way it mirrors deeper truths about human cognition. The number 3 resonates across cultures as a primal pattern. Think birth, life, death, mind, body, spirit, or even the 3-act structure of storytelling. The Triquetra's arcs visually capture this universal rhythm, making it a perfect vessel for evolving spiritual ideas. When Irish monks began transcribing Christian texts in the 6th century, they didn't erase pagan symbols, they repurposed them. The Book of Kells, that masterpiece of medieval artistry, teems with triquetras framing biblical scenes, their pagan roots softened into Christian geometry. This wasn't accidental. Missionaries understood that converting minds required speaking a familiar visual language, one where old gods could quietly become new saints. Yet the symbol refused to be pinned down. Norse traders carried it to Scandinavia, where it morphed into the Valknut's cousin, associated with Odin's power to bind and unbind fate. Alchemists later adopted it as a representation of the 3 primal elements, salt, sulfur, and mercury. Today, it spins through pop culture from the opening credits of Charmed, where it shields 3 witch sisters, to heavy metal album art echoing Celtic mysticism. This chameleon-like quality raises a provocative question. Is the Triquetra's endurance due to its simplicity or its mystery? Unlike rigid icons, its open center invites interpretation, allowing each generation to project their own meaning onto its curves. Modern pagans and Christians alike still trace its lines with reverence, proving that symbols don't belong to any one tradition. They belong to humanity. The Triquetra's greatest lesson might be this: belief systems rise and fall, but the shapes that contain them can outlast empires, whispering across centuries that some truths are too profound to be owned. The phoenix rises from its own ashes not just in one myth, but in dozens, each culture painting its fiery rebirth with different colors, yet all telling the same astonishing story of cyclical immortality. In Egypt, the Bennu bird perched on sacred obelisks at Heliopolis, its cry marking the dawn of a new era as it burst into flames every 500 years. Chinese scrolls depict the Fenghuang not as a solitary creature, but as a duality, male and female energies united in radiant plumage, appearing only when harmony reigns. Half a world away, the Persian simurgh nests atop the tree of knowledge, its feathers curing all ailments before it immolates itself in a blaze of wisdom. How did civilizations with no shared language or trade routes dream up the same miraculous bird? The answer might lie in humanity's oldest witness, the sun. Ancient astronomers from Babylon to Mesoamerica tracked solar cycles, watching the death of sunset and rebirth of dawn with awe. The phoenix became a celestial metaphor, its flames mirroring solar flares, its resurrection echoing the sun's victorious return after winter's darkness. Early Christians, seeking symbols to convey Christ's resurrection to pagan converts, adopted the phoenix as a natural bridge. A 4th century mosaic in Rome's Basilica of Santa Costanza shows the bird haloed like a saint, its wings outstretched beside a caption, "Christ who is our phoenix." Even the timing of Easter, calculated by lunar and solar cycles, subtly reinforces this cosmic parallel. Alchemists saw deeper layers in the phoenix's flames. To them, its death wasn't just renewal, it was the ultimate transmutation, where base elements became gold through purification by fire. Their manuscripts depict the bird atop a nest of twigs that morph into chemical symbols, its body dissolving into a crimson elixir. This wasn't mere fantasy. Early chemists drew inspiration from real-world observations like the salamander's fire-resistant skin or the way certain metals resurrected with new properties after heating. The phoenix became shorthand for the alchemical magnum opus, the quest to perfect matter and spirit alike. Modern psychology offers another lens. Carl Jung interpreted the phoenix as the psyche's ability to rebuild after trauma, a symbol of the individuation process where old identities must burn away for growth to occur. Soldiers returning from war often dream of phoenix imagery unconsciously, their minds reaching for this ancient template of healing. Even today, the bird soars through pop culture, from Harry Potter's fox, whose tears heal mortal wounds, to the rebel symbol in Hunger Games, stitched onto jackets as a silent promise of resistance. What's haunting isn't the phoenix's ubiquity, but its timing. The symbol flares during humanity's darkest hours, carved on amulets after the Black Death, inked onto skin by Holocaust survivors, painted on murals after natural disasters. Its message isn't just hope, but a more radical truth, that destruction isn't the opposite of creation, it's its necessary partner. Whether as a solar metaphor, alchemical guide, or psychological salve, the phoenix whispers that to rise anew, we must first have the courage to burn. The Yin-Yang doesn't just decorate meditation apps and yoga studio walls. It pulses with a truth so fundamental that civilizations kept rediscovering it like a cosmic refrain. That iconic swirl of black and white first emerged in ancient China around the 3rd century BCE. but its essence appears centuries earlier in the I Ching's broken and unbroken lines, whispering that light cannot exist without shadow. Yet halfway across the ancient world, Persian Zoroastrians worshipped Ahura Mazda and Angra Mainyu, twin forces of creation and destruction locked in eternal struggle. Gnostic scriptures spoke of the syzygy, paired divine energies that together formed perfect unity. Even Norse mythology had its ice and fire realms, Ginnungagap's void birthing all existence from their collision. The question isn't why the yin-yang endured, it's why this same duality haunts humanity's imagination like a shared dream. Look closer at the Taoist symbol's secret genius, that tiny dot of opposing color nested within each half. This isn't just artistic flair, it's a radical philosophical statement. The darkest night carries the promise of dawn, the brightest flame casts the deepest shadow. Chinese physicians mapped this principle onto the body centuries before modern medicine, seeing health as the dance between Kai's warming yang and cooling yin. An imbalance led to fever or chills, just as a society tilted too far toward rigid order or chaotic freedom would collapse. The Tao Te Ching puts it succinctly: when people see some things as beautiful, other things become ugly. The yin-yang warns against absolutes, reminding us that extremes contain their own undoing. But here's where it gets fascinating. The symbol's journey westward reveals how fluidly ideas morph across cultures. When Jesuit missionaries brought the yin-yang to Europe in the 17th century, scholars initially dismissed it as pagan nonsense until mathematician Gottfried Leibniz recognized its binary elegance. Those two swirling halves inspired his development of the binary code, the very foundation of modern computing. Today's zeros and ones are distant echoes of Taoist thought, proving that ancient symbols can fuel technological revolutions. Meanwhile, in Japan, the yin-yang called Inyo took on martial dimensions. Samurai applied its principles to swordplay, knowing that defense must live within every attack, stillness within every movement. Modern science keeps stumbling upon the yin-yang's wisdom. Quantum physics reveals particles as both waves and discrete points, depending on how you observe them. Ecologists find ecosystems thrive on balanced competition, predators and prey locked in a dance that sustains the whole. Even our brains operate through opposing systems, the logical prefrontal cortex and the emotional limbic system, forever negotiating our reality. The yin-yang's brilliance lies in its refusal to declare a winner. Unlike Western dualism that often frames good versus evil as a battle to the death, the Taoist symbol insists they're partners in a greater harmony. Perhaps that's why this ancient emblem feels urgently relevant today. In an era of polarized politics and climate crises, the yin-yang offers a radical alternative, not compromise but symbiosis. It asks us to see conservatives and progressives, technology and nature, even joy and sorrow as interdependent forces. The symbol's curves mock straight-line thinking, inviting us to embrace life's paradoxes, that healing often begins with breaking, that the strongest bonds sometimes require letting go. 2.5 millennia after its birth, the yin-yang still spins its quiet challenge. Can we hold opposites without tearing them apart? The tree of life stretches its roots through soil and myth alike, no mere plant, but a living axis around which entire cosmologies revolve. In Norse sagas, Yggdrasil's colossal trunk pierces 9 realms, its roots gnawed by the dragon Nidhöggr, while an eagle nests in its highest branches. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Maya artists painted the ceiba tree with identical purpose, its roots plunging into Xibalba's underworld, its trunk hosting mortal life, and its crown brushing against the heavens. What's staggering isn't just the visual resemblance, it's how these cultures, separated by oceans and centuries, imbued their world trees with the same eerie functions. Each one serves as a ladder for shamans, a battleground for gods, and a clock marking cosmic cycles. Dig deeper, and the parallels grow stranger. The Babylonian epic of Gilgamesh describes a sacred hulappu tree whose roots reach the underworld, much like Yggdrasil, while its crown hosts a divine eagle, an echo so precise it defies coincidence. Kabbalistic tradition's etched mirrors this structure, its 10 Sephiroth glowing like fruit on metaphysical branches, mapping the soul's ascent toward enlightenment. Even Hinduism's Ashvatha tree, mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, grows upside down, roots in heaven, branches embracing earth, a flipped but functionally identical metaphor. This isn't just artistic inspiration, it's as if humanity collectively dreamed the same towering archetype into existence. Why trees? The answer might lie in our species' earliest memories. Before cities or scriptures, ancient humans recognized trees as microcosms of existence, roots drinking from hidden waters like subconscious desires, trunks weathering storms like mortal struggles, branches straining toward light like spiritual yearning. A tree's seasonal death and rebirth made it the perfect symbol for cyclic time, a concept etched into Celtic ogam carvings and Chinese peach tree immortality myths alike. But the tree of life's true power lies in its duality. It's both map and messenger, a static object that somehow facilitates movement between worlds. Siberian shamans still carve spirit ladders into birch trunks, believing they can climb to the upper realms, just as Norse myths tell of Odin hanging himself from Yggdrasil to gain runic wisdom. The tree doesn't just connect realms, it demands sacrifice from those who dare to traverse it. Modern science adds a provocative layer to this arboreal enigma. The Wood Wide Web theory reveals how real trees communicate through fungal networks, sharing nutrients and warnings, an eerie parallel to Yggdrasil's role as cosmic messenger. Even fractals, those infinitely repeating patterns in nature, often take tree-like forms, suggesting our ancestors might have intuited a universal geometry we're only now quantifying. The tree of life endures because it's more than metaphor, it's a mirror. Every time we sketch a family tree or describe neural pathways as branches, we're invoking the same primal image that once anchored entire civilizations. Its roots, it seems, are tangled deep in the human mind. The hammer of Thor swings through history with far more than brute force. It's a paradox of destruction and protection, divine might and human devotion. Mjolnir's name likely means the crusher, and its myths describe a weapon so devastating it could level mountains, yet so precise Thor once used it to gently resurrect his slaughtered goats. This duality is the key to its endurance. Viking brides clutched tiny hammer amulets during weddings, calling on Thor to bless their unions with the same ferocity he wielded against giants. Farmers pressed hammer-shaped pendants into freshly plowed soil, transforming a tool of war into a sacred plowshare. Even the Norse afterlife wasn't immune to its power. Graves from Sweden to Iceland reveal skeletons buried with miniature hammers clutched in bony fingers, as if death itself demanded Thor's protection. What's startling isn't just the hammer's spiritual versatility, but how it mirrored Viking social values. Medieval law codes from Norway show defendants swearing oaths on Mjolnir rings, invoking thunder as their witness. A 10th century mold discovered in Denmark had cavities for casting both crosses and hammers side by side, proof that early Norse Christians saw no contradiction in blending symbols. This wasn't mere superstition, it reflected a worldview where strength and sanctity intertwined. To carry Mjolnir was to declare allegiance to order over chaos, a theme that resonated deeply in a culture where harsh winters and roving invaders made survival precarious. Fast forward to today, and the hammer's legacy fractures like lightning across pop culture. Marvel's comics turned it into a superhero prop, yet modern heathenry reclaims it as a living religious emblem. Blacksmiths specializing in Norse revival work report soaring demand for historically accurate replicas, each one forged with the same rituals described in medieval texts, hammered on an anvil while verses from the Poetic Edda are recited. Archaeologists note an eerie parallel. Contemporary Mjolnir pendants are often found broken deliberately, just as ancient ones were, suggesting a tradition unbroken for over 1,000 years. The hammer's true power lies in its adaptability. Viking traders carried it as far as Constantinople, where it mingled with Christian and Islamic symbols in bustling marketplaces. 18th century Icelandic manuscripts depict it morphing into a cross during the island's conversion, a visual metaphor for cultural synthesis. Even the Nazis failed to taint it permanently. Unlike the swastika, Mjolnir's association with a specific pantheon made it harder to co-opt for nationalist ideologies. Today, it dangles from the necks of metalheads and meditation teachers alike, a rare symbol equally at home in mosh pits and mindfulness retreats. Perhaps Mjolnir endures because it answers a deeply human need for tools that can build and break, protect and punish. Its shape is primal enough to feel universal, yet specific enough to carry mythic weight. Every time a blacksmith's hammer strikes hot iron, or a toddler stacks wooden blocks into a crude hammer shape, the symbol renews itself. Thor's weapon was never just his, it belongs to anyone who's ever raised a tool, literal or metaphorical, against life's chaos. The Lotus doesn't merely float, it defies. Rooted in sludge, it pushes through murky waters to unfurl petals untouched by the filth below, a daily miracle that captivated ancient priests and philosophers alike. In the dim light of Egyptian temple sanctuaries, the blue lotus was believed to open each morning with the rising sun, mirroring the birth of the sun god Ra from primordial chaos. Hindu scriptures describe the universe itself unfolding like a 1,000-petaled lotus, each layer a plane of existence, with the divine seated at its fragrant heart. Meanwhile, along the Ganges, Buddha is often depicted enthroned upon a lotus, his enlightenment proof that wisdom can blossom even in life's most stagnant waters. This isn't just poetic coincidence, it's a shared recognition of nature's most stubborn truth. Transformation requires resistance. Dive deeper into the lotus's biology, and its symbolism grows richer. The flower's seeds can lie dormant for centuries in dry lake beds, only to sprout when rains return, a fact that mesmerized early Buddhists who saw in it a metaphor for the potential within every mind. Its leaves repel dirt so completely that chemists still study their microstructure, hoping to replicate their self-cleaning properties. Even the plant's daily cycle, submerging at night only to re-emerge at dawn, mirrored the Egyptian soul's journey through the underworld, where the righteous would rise renewed like the sun. The lotus didn't just inspire spirituality, it modeled it, offering a tangible blueprint for transcending adversity. But the flower's reach extends far beyond temples and texts. In traditional Chinese medicine, lotus seeds are prescribed to calm the spirit, their bitter taste said to carry the memory of struggle. Japanese artists for centuries practiced ikebana, arranging lotus stems to capture the fleeting balance between fragility and resilience. Even modern science pays homage, researchers naming a newly discovered protein, lotusin, for its ability to help cells withstand stress. This cross-cultural reverence suggests something profound, that the lotus isn't just a symbol of purity, but of persistence. Its message resonates with anyone who's ever fought to grow in less than ideal conditions, whether a meditating monk or a single parent working late shifts. Perhaps the lotus endures because it's both gentle and tenacious, Unlike thorned roses or towering oaks, it doesn't dominate its environment, it transforms it. The murkier the water, the brighter its petals seem. From the marshlands of the Nile to the rooftop gardens of Manhattan, where urban yogis tattoo its image over scars, the lotus continues to teach without words. It whispers that struggle isn't the opposite of beauty, it's the soil from which beauty grows. And in a world increasingly divided between darkness and light, maybe that's the lesson we need most. The pentagram gleams from ancient clay tablets like a geometric whisper, 5 sharp points stretching outward, each line intersecting with perfect symmetry. Long before it haunted Hollywood horror films, this star fascinated Babylonian mathematicians who etched it onto jars to represent celestial patterns. Pythagoras and his followers saw divinity in its proportions, calling it the Hygeia, symbol for its embodiment of mathematical purity. The same shape appears in medieval grimoires, carefully drawn within protective circles to summon angelic forces rather than demonic ones. Yet today, mention a 5-pointed star, and many immediately picture sinister rituals or transformations so dramatic it raises the question: how did a symbol of harmony become shorthand for horror? Consider the pentagram's golden ratio, where every intersecting line divides into segments mirroring the mathematical constant phi. Renaissance artists like Leonardo da Vinci marveled at this divine proportion, weaving it secretly into their masterpieces. Alchemists paired it with the 5 classical elements: earth, air, fire, water, and spirit, believing its geometry could unlock nature's hidden order. Even the U.S. Department of Defense didn't shy away from its power, adopting a tilted pentagram as the 5-sided pentagon's blueprint. But somewhere between Pythagoras' lectures and 20th century cinema, the symbol's meaning flipped. The same star that once guarded medieval churches as the pentalpha, 5 interwoven A's representing Christ's wounds, became a Hollywood prop for villains, its inversion falsely linked to Satanism through sensationalized folklore. This duality reflects a deeper truth about symbols, their vessels waiting to be filled with meaning. In Wiccan traditions, the pentagram remains a sacred emblem of protection, often worn as jewelry or traced in the air during rituals. Its 5 points correspond to the human body's outstretched limbs, celebrating the connection between microcosm and macrocosm. Meanwhile, heavy metal bands and occult-themed TV shows amplify its edgy reputation, proving that context is everything. The pentagram's journey isn't about good or evil, it's about who wields it and why. Perhaps the most fascinating twist lies in its scientific legacy. Modern researchers have discovered pentagonal symmetry in everything from viral capsids to flowering plants, suggesting the ancients intuited a pattern fundamental to life itself. Crystallographers study quasi-crystals with pentagram-like atomic structures, materials once thought impossible under classical geometry. Even children unknowingly honor its legacy when doodling stars, a shape so intuitive it emerges across cultures and eras. The pentagram's real magic isn't in summoning spirits, but in revealing how humans seek order in chaos, whether through sacred geometry or pop culture tropes. Its 5 points still pierce the veil between reverence and fear, reminding us that symbols don't change, only the stories we hang upon them do. The spiral winds through time and space like a silent whisper from the universe itself, etched into prehistoric cave walls 30,000 years before the pyramids, unfurling in the fiddleheads of young ferns, even spinning across the cosmos in the arms of distant galaxies. This shape isn't just common, it's compulsive, as if nature can't help but return to its favorite blueprint. Take the Celtic Triskelion's threefold spiral, a symbol so dynamic it seems to rotate before your eyes, mirroring the sun's path across the sky. Or the Hindu chakra system, where energy coils upward like a serpent, each vortex a stepping stone to higher consciousness. Even the Fibonacci sequence, that mathematical marvel where each number is the sum of the two before it manifests in spirals from sunflower seed arrangements to nautilus shells. What is it about this curve that feels less like an accident and more like a hidden instruction manual for existence? Consider the spiral's practicality. A ram's horns grow in this shape to maximize strength while minimizing material, just as hurricanes spin to distribute energy efficiently. But there's something deeper at work here, an almost eerie resonance between the microscopic and the cosmic. Under a microscope, the double helix of DNA twists like a spiral staircase, while light years away, galaxies whirl in the same elegant pattern. Indigenous cultures from the Maori to the Hopi recognized this thread-linking scales, carving spiral petroglyphs as maps of both earthly cycles and celestial movements. The spiral doesn't just appear in nature, it optimizes it, governing how things expand, contract, and transform. Alchemists saw the spiral as the path of spiritual evolution, the soul's journey inward before bursting outward with newfound wisdom. Medieval mystics painted golden spirals in illuminated manuscripts, aligning them with a divine proportion, said to underlie all beauty. Even modern science can't escape its pull. Physicists studying quantum fields find spiral waveforms in the fabric of spacetime, while neurologists note that our brains process spiral patterns faster than any other shape, as if we're hardwired to understand its language. Perhaps the spiral's greatest lesson is its refusal to fit binary thinking. It's neither purely chaos nor rigid order, but a dance between the two, growth that's both exponential and measured, expansion with rhythm. From the whirlpool of a draining bathtub to the vast pinwheel galaxy, the spiral whispers the same truth. Transformation isn't linear, it's a turning, a returning, a continuous becoming. Every time we trace its curve, whether in ancient art, a seashell's ridges, or the curl of a sleeping cat, we're glimpsing a code older than civilization itself. And the most humbling part, we're not just observers of this pattern, we're made from it. Deep in the primeval forests of Europe, antlered figures emerge from the mist. Cernunnos, the Celtic lord of beasts, seated cross-legged with torques dangling from his mighty horns, while Pan, the Greek god of wild places, pipes his eerie melodies through wooded valleys. These horned deities weren't mere characters in forgotten myths. They were living embodiments of nature's untamed heartbeat. For ancient Celts, Cernunnos' twisted antlers mirrored the branching canopy of sacred groves, his presence a reminder that humans were just one thread in the web of life. Meanwhile, Pan's goat-legged form embodied the unsettling truth that wilderness refuses to be domesticated, his very name giving us the word panic, that primal fear when the civilized mind confronts the unknown. But these god stories took a dark turn with the rise of Christianity. Medieval artists began grafting their horns onto depictions of the devil, transforming symbols of fertility into emblems of sin. Church frescoes showed demonic figures with Pan's shaggy legs and Cernunnos' antlers, a deliberate smear campaign against pagan Europe's deepest spiritual anchors. By the witch trial era, horns had become shorthand for evil, yet this demonization only underscores how threatening these deities were to rigid dogma. They represented everything the New Order sought to suppress: unbridled creativity, the sacredness of instinct, and the messy, glorious cycles of birth and decay. Modern pagans are unraveling centuries of distortion, reclaiming these gods as mentors for ecological consciousness. Contemporary rituals often invoke Cernunnos as a patron of rewilding efforts, while Pan's mythology resonates with those seeking to reconnect with untamed landscapes. Artists and musicians channel their energy, from surrealist paintings to folk metal ballads that echo Pan's pipes. Even psychologists weigh in. Carl Jung saw horned gods as archetypes of the shadow self, the parts of humanity we've tried to prune away in favor of sterile rationality. The enduring power of these figures lies in their refusal to be civilized. They challenge the illusion that humans stand apart from nature, instead placing us back among the herds and groves where we began. Every time we feel the pull of a moonlit forest or the thrill of a thunderstorm, we're brushing against the same forces our ancestors called Cernunnos and Pan. Their horns aren't just anatomy, they're antennas tuning into frequencies older than agriculture, older than cities, older than the very idea of sin. In a world of concrete and screens, perhaps we need these wild gods more than ever. The Sun Cross spins through history like a silent celestial clock, a perfect circle quartered by straight lines, so simple yet so profound that cultures across continents and millennia arrived at it independently. Picture Bronze Age priests in Scandinavia carving it onto stone slabs to track the sun's journey, while half a world away, Lakota medicine men painted it onto buffalo hides as a map of the sacred directions. This isn't just geometric coincidence, it's humanity's shared attempt to pin down the cosmos's grand rhythms. The symbol's power lies in its dual nature, the circle representing the sun's eternal cycle, the cross marking the solstices and equinoxes where heaven and earth seem to touch. What's astonishing isn't just its prevalence, but its precision. At Newgrange in Ireland, a 5,000-year-old sun cross aligns with the winter solstice sunrise, illuminating a burial chamber like a divine spotlight. Aztec codices depict Tonatiuh, the sun god, framed by the same symbol, his rays extending along the crossarms like cosmic coordinates. Even the Zia Pueblo sun symbol, now emblazoned on New Mexico's flag, follows this ancient template. 4 radiating lines dividing a circle, mirroring the 4 seasons, the 4 phases of life, and the 4 times of day when light shifts its quality. This wasn't primitive stargazing, it was advanced celestial mathematics encoded in elegant shorthand. But the Sun Cross's true genius emerges in its practicality. Norse navigators used it as a rudimentary compass, aligning the crossarms with the horizon's cardinal points during long sea voyages. Celtic tribes etched it onto boundary stones, turning farmland into a giant sundial where shadows traced the seasons. Some scholars argue these crosses were more than ritual art. They were functional tools, a prehistoric GPS guiding everything from planting schedules to migratory routes. The symbol's endurance suggests it worked. Even today, fragments of its logic survive in the compass, rose on maps, or the wheel-like designs of modern sundials. Yet beneath its utility hums a deeper mystery. Why did cultures with no contact from the Maya to the Minoans fixate on this specific arrangement of circle and cross? Jungian psychologists propose it's an archetype etched into the human psyche, a primal recognition of order within chaos. Modern astronomers offer a humbler explanation. The Sun Cross simply mirrors what any observant person sees: the sun's path splitting the sky into quarters, day after day, year after year. Whether as sacred art or survival tool, this symbol whispers that the universe isn't random. Its lines still point the way, not just across landscapes, but through time itself. The double-headed eagle spreads its wings across history with a gaze fixed on 2 horizons at once, a creature of impossible vision, embodying the eternal human hunger to master both halves of the world. Carved into Hittite temple walls 3,000 years ago, stamped onto Byzantine emperors' seals, and woven into the banners of medieval alchemists, this chimera wasn't just a heraldic oddity. It was a political manifesto in feather and claw. Picture a Byzantine general unfurling a silk standard embroidered with golden twin eagles, their beaks pointing defiantly toward Rome and Persia, a silent declaration that his empire refused to choose between continents or cultures. But how did this hybrid symbol migrate from Bronze Age battlefields to modern presidential palaces? The answer lies in its genius design, a visual shorthand for ruling the unrulable. Look closer at those twin heads. One eye watches the rising sun, the other tracks its setting, an avian Janus straddling dawn and dusk, sacred and secular, tradition and progress. The Hittites likely adopted it after witnessing actual eagles soaring over their Anatolian highlands, their flight patterns mapping the empire's sprawling borders. When Byzantine emperors resurrected the symbol in the 10th century, they added a twist, clutching a cross and orb in its talons, fusing Christian authority with Roman imperial legacy. This adaptability made the eagle irresistible to rulers facing fractured realms. Tsar Ivan the Terrible slapped it on his throne after marrying into Byzantine nobility, while Habsburg monarchs used it to symbolize their dual role as kings of Germany and emperors of Rome. Freemasons gave the symbol its most esoteric spin. In their rituals, the double-headed eagle represents the 33rd degree of enlightenment, the moment when an initiate supposedly achieves perfect balance between opposing forces. Alchemical manuscripts depict it with one head crowned, the other bare, illustrating the marriage of spiritual and material gold. Even the founding fathers played with this imagery. Early drafts of the Great Seal of the United States featured a double-headed eagle before settling on the single-headed version. The symbol's elasticity is its superpower, equally at home on war banners and in meditation chambers. Today, the eagle's split gaze still watches from flags and crests across Eastern Europe and the Middle East, from Albania's crimson banner to the Orthodox Church's ecclesiastical seals. Modern nations invoke it for the same reason emperors and mystics did: its unmatched ability to project unity from duality. In a world increasingly fractured by binaries, East versus West, ancient versus modern, this ancient chimera offers a radical alternative, not conquest of one over the other, but mastery of both. Its wingspan stretches beyond politics into psychology, challenging us to hold contradictory truths without tearing ourselves apart. The double-headed eagle's real power isn't in dominating geography, it's in reminding us that true sovereignty begins when we stop choosing sides. The scarab beetle pushes its ball of dung across the hot Egyptian sand with a determination that seems almost divine, an ordinary insect performing an extraordinary alchemy, turning waste into life. To the ancients watching this daily ritual, the humble scarab became a living metaphor for their most sacred belief, that death is not an end but a transformation. They named it Khepri, linking it to the god who rolled the sun across the sky each morning like a celestial dung beetle, ensuring the world's rebirth at dawn. But this wasn't just poetic whimsy. It was a profound recognition of nature's cycles mirrored in the smallest of creatures. Amulets carved from green feldspar or blue faience were placed over mummies' hearts, inscribed with spells from the Book of the Dead to guarantee safe passage into the afterlife. These scarabs weren't mere decorations, they were functional magic, tiny engines of resurrection powered by symbolism. What's mesmerizing isn't just the scarab's spiritual role, but the precision of its biological inspiration. Female dung beetles lay their eggs inside carefully sculpted dung balls, which then serve as both nursery and nourishment for their young. To Egyptian observers, this mirrored the sun disappearing at night only to emerge renewed, a literal example of life emerging from decay. The scarab's larval stage, hidden inside the dung ball, became a parallel for the soul's journey through Duat, the underworld. Even the beetle's wing cases, which opened to reveal delicate flying wings beneath, echoed the Egyptian concept of the Ba, the soul's mobile form that could ascend to the heavens. This wasn't just symbolism, it was sophisticated biomimicry, where every aspect of the beetle's life cycle mapped onto cosmic principles. The scarab's influence stretched far beyond tomb artifacts. Pharaohs used them as royal seals, pressing their flat bases into clay to leave impressions commemorating military victories or temple dedications. Some bore the names of kings alongside protective spells, turning administrative tools into talismans. Archaeologists have found scarabs from ancient trade routes stretching to Mesopotamia and the Aegean, proving this Egyptian icon traveled farther than the actual beetles ever could. Even the biblical book of Exodus mentions scarabs in its list of plagues, though scholars suggest this might reflect cultural disdain for Egyptian symbolism rather than literal insect infestations. Modern science adds an ironic twist to the scarab's legacy. Researchers now study dung beetles for their remarkable navigation skills. Some species use the Milky Way to orient themselves while rolling their precious spheres. This celestial connection would have delighted the ancient priests who first linked the beetle to the sun's journey. Meanwhile, contemporary artists and environmentalists reclaim the scarab as an emblem of sustainability, celebrating its role in recycling waste into fertile soil. The beetle's lesson resonates today more than ever, that transformation often begins in the unlikeliest places, and that what society dismisses as lowly might hold the keys to renewal. The scarab's enduring power lies in its refusal to be categorized. It's both mundane and magical, earthly and celestial, a creature of the soil that somehow charts the heavens. Its image still adorns jewelry and art, not as a relic of superstition, but as a reminder that the universe's grandest patterns are often written in the smallest scripts. Every time a dung beetle rolls its ball today, it reenacts the oldest story humanity knows, that from darkness comes light, from endings, beginnings. The Egyptians weren't worshipping an insect, they were honoring the undeniable truth written in its tireless, patient labor. The Vesica piscis glows softly in cathedral-stained glass and ancient manuscripts, two perfect circles overlapping to form a lens-shaped void, a geometric sigh where worlds meet. At first glance, it's just simple math, the first step in sacred geometry, where compasses trace the universe's blueprint. But look deeper, and this almond-shaped space becomes a portal. Early Christians hid it inside their ichthys fish symbol, the curves of the vesica framing the Savior's name in code. Gothic architects spun entire ribbed vaults from its proportions, believing these ratios echoed divine harmony. Even Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man fits neatly within its bounds, as if the human form itself were whispered into existence from this intersection of spheres. What makes this shape so hypnotic isn't just its symmetry, it's the precision of its ratios. Draw a line from the top to the bottom of the vesica, and it measures exactly the square root of 3 relative to the circle's radii. This irrational number, endless and unrepeating, appears everywhere from quantum physics to the spiral arms of galaxies. To the Pythagoreans, such mathematical constants were proof of a hidden order, a secret language written into reality. The vesica became their Rosetta Stone, a shape that could translate between the seen and unseen. Alchemists later claimed it symbolized the meeting of heaven and earth, its upper curve representing the celestial realm, its lower arc the material world, and the central overlap, the liminal space where transformation occurs. But the vesica's magic isn't confined to dusty scrolls. Stand beneath the soaring arches of Chartres Cathedral, and you're literally surrounded by its geometry. Medieval masons used these proportions intentionally, believing buildings crafted with sacred ratios would resonate with spiritual energy. Step into a traditional Japanese torii gate, and you'll find the same shape framing the transition from mundane to sacred. Even modern science nods to its power. The vesica's form appears in the interference patterns of light waves and the overlapping fields of quantum particles. It's as if the universe keeps whispering this pattern into existence, from the macrocosm to the microcosm. Perhaps the most haunting interpretation comes from mystic traditions, where the vesica is called the womb of creation. Its almond shape mirrors the mandala, the halo of light encircling holy figures in Byzantine art, symbolizing their emergence into higher planes. Some esoteric schools suggest it maps the human eye's pupil or the vulva, making it a biological as well as cosmological metaphor. Whether as architectural guide, spiritual symbol, or scientific accident, the Vesica Piscis challenges us to reconsider boundaries. It asks what marvels might emerge if we dare to overlap disciplines, beliefs, even dimensions with the same fearless precision as those two perfect circles. These 24 symbols are not frozen artifacts of a forgotten world. They are living keys, still turning in the locks of our collective consciousness. Take the Ankh, dangling from modern necklaces as both fashion statement and silent vow of eternal connection, or the scarab's image pressed into eco-friendly logos, reminding us that renewal begins with what we discard. These shapes have outlasted empires because they speak a language deeper than words, one that bypasses dogma and settles directly into the human soul. Consider how the Ouroboros, that serpent swallowing its tail, has slithered from alchemy labs to quantum physics textbooks, where scientists use it to illustrate the cyclical nature of energy in closed systems. Or the way the flower of life's intricate geometry now inspires sustainable architecture, its patterns optimizing solar panel arrays just as they once guided temple builders. This isn't coincidence, it's evidence that our ancestors encoded universal truths into visual shorthand, truths we're only now verifying with microscopes and equations. What makes these symbols extraordinary isn't just their endurance, but their mutability. The Valknut, once carved onto Viking shields to pledge fealty to Odin, now appears in fantasy novels as a sigil of fictional brotherhoods. The Lotus, sacred to Buddha and Pharaoh alike, blooms on mindfulness app icons, its message of rising above adversity translated for a digital age. They evolve without losing their essence, like rivers that change course but never forget their source. So the next time you encounter one of these shapes etched into a park bench, woven into a film's costume design, or flashing across your screen in a video game, pause. You're not just seeing a pretty design, you're glimpsing a fragment of a hidden language, one that has whispered across millennia to anyone willing to look beyond the surface. The real mystery isn't whether more symbols await discovery, but whether we'll recognize them when they appear. After all, the most powerful secrets aren't buried in tombs, they're hidden in the open, waiting for the right eyes to see them anew. What will you notice tomorrow that others overlook today? The conversation continues below, and if you've enjoyed unraveling these threads with us, tap that subscribe button, because history's greatest puzzles are still being solved, one symbol at a